a specific workshop that stands out that is particularly applicable to this job. Again, with your resume, I don't think you have to tweak it as much, but list some specifics, especially if you've gone to a lot of workshops, a lot of conferences, and that related to the field. I think those are important to list in your resume because you don't have as much professional experience to list. If you have any professional experience, please list it.
How many pages do you think a good resume should be? Well,
Honestly, Honestly, I think a maximum of 2.
2. So here, 1 there, 2.
I don't think 1 is as realistic as 2, but I don't think it should be longer than 2. I think that especially coming out, you do want to list some of those specifics that you have to offer.
Going off of that, if you do have a 2-page resume, do you prefer it to be actually 2 pages or front and back?
And again, for me, it doesn't matter because it comes out in PDF and I can print it out however I want. And but if I were printing it out and submitting it, I wouldn't do front to back. Because I will tell you, there are people, my boss regularly overlooks stuff if I print it front to back, and I print everything front to back to save paper, and she's always saying, well, you missed page 2. No, you missed page 2.
Get over.
So I really do think that if you're printing it out and submitting it, that you should print them on separate pieces of paper. Your high school information really isn't as applicable. A line in there, you know, you graduated from high school this year. If you were in National Honor Society or you have some specific honor that stands out, especially for those of you, I look around the room, you're fairly young, whereas I was 30 when I was in the ITP, so high school is a little further away from the jobs I was applying to. The further you get out of high school, the less applicable it becomes, and you want to keep your resume as concise as possible and only put the information. But if you were a stellar high school student and that can help, then put it in there. If you won any academic awards, dean's list, or anything like that for college, list that. Again, you want to beef up the parts that you can because you don't have the professional experience that somebody that's been working in the field for several years would have.
If we're applying for a job and say volunteer work we did in high school would give us experience in doing something that would be involved in the job, should we bring that up?
Mm-hmm. I think, yeah. And if you don't put it in your resume, definitely mention it in your cover letter. You know, so it doesn't all have to be in that resume. Your cover letter is also a way that you can add some of that information without making your resume go on and on and on. Because after so much, you really tune out of that resume. You know, I'll pick out the parts that I think are applicable. I won't read it all with a fine-tooth comb. Whereas I do have a staff member that will read it all with a fine-tooth comb. But, I mean, I think sometimes there is too much information. Use the same font, but use bold or italics for emphasis. Don't be changing the font so that it looks cutesy. And really, the simpler, the better. My pet peeve is when I get a resume and I have to really struggle to figure out what that address is, what that name is, because they use this really fun, cute font on the heading or whatever. Really make it easy for me to read. I'm getting older, I need glasses, I don't want to be fighting with the font. Be consistent in how you list things. If you're listing chronologically, make sure you're always starting with, if you're going oldest to newest or newest to oldest, just be consistent throughout the entire document. We already touched on right for your reader. Do not assume everyone knows what your state leveling exam is. And that's especially true if you're applying for positions out of state. If you're talking about the WITA, make sure you explain what that is, because somebody from Arizona may not know that. Again, if you are going to list workshops and everything, make sure you have accurate titles. Especially if you're putting down that you were involved in something, and I'm looking at it, and possibly I was involved in that workshop, or I want to make sure you're listing it right. That's another thing that'll set me off, is when you don't take the time to really put the details in there accurately.
I noticed this year at Wisrid, the schedule on the website had kind of different titles than the ones that they gave us. Which one do we use?
The gave you,
Okay.
the printed document.
Okay.
And the only thing I can say about that is I put it on the website and I only put down what they gave me, so the inconsistency came from them, not me.
Okay.
I take no responsibility for it, but use the printed document that came with because you'll see that, I think often, that sometimes maybe what's listed preliminarily, but when you actually go to the workshop, whatever document or title they're using at the workshop is the one that they've finalized. Because sometimes the presenters themselves will tweak that. If you haven't taken any of your credentialing, if you haven't taken the WITA, if you haven't taken the NIC written, which I know you guys all will, or did.
Most of them did.
Maybe some of them did.
But if you haven't taken it, have it scheduled so that you can say, I am taking it on such and such a date. Again, without having credentials, if you're not, certified yet, it really helps to have something that we know, well, they're working towards it, they actually have a date scheduled, then, oh, I plan to take it sometime in December. It's not quite as concrete as we would like it. Question? No? Including your GPA, especially if it's something, if you've got a high GPA, anybody that worked in the field and has gone through an interpreter training program does realize how difficult it is. And so if you do have a good GPA, I think it's really important to put it down because that says something about your skills also.
What do you consider a good GPA?
What's a good GPA?
Oh.
Back in the day, 2.0.
3.0 above?
I was gonna say I wouldn't go under 3. But and then if you don't list it, then I kind of question. Not always, but I have to say the last couple batches, I don't think that we've had GPAs listed. But I do think that if you have a strong GPA, that says something about you. It says something about your work ethic. And so put it in there. I'd say if it's over a 3. Be sure to categorize your programs correctly. I mean, I know that technically the interpreter training program isn't a degree program, it's exceptional education with an emphasis on sign language interpreting, but make sure you put that, make sure you have the whole title of your degree and have it accurately. Because there are other programs, some programs were an associate degree and other programs are not a degree at all, it's a certificate program, but that's important to say. But really emphasize too the interpreter training program that you've gone through. And if you've taken other classes like in ESL studies and stuff like that that are a benefit, you can highlight some of those specific classes that you've taken in. And that helps. Proofread. The reference page, again, I really think it's important to keep that consistency between your cover letter, your resume, and then your reference page. And if I ask for references, don't give me a letter of recommendation, give me names and contact information for references. And the reason for that is, especially here at the university, we have to be consistent with everybody. And so I have specific questions that I ask references. And so if you give me a letter of recommendation, they maybe don't touch on some of those things that I want to know. And what they think is important. They're great, and they can really pump you up, and they feel good, and there's really wonderful information about myself that I want to add. I think it's okay to have that, but if I ask for 3 references, give me three people that I could contact and call and ask these questions I need to ask.
So, as far as a letter of recommendation, then, would that be just an extra thing that we might throw in there? A 4th person, or is that even something you want?